Hello to anyone who's watching. My name is Antonina Tosiek, and this year I have a pleasure to interview authors whose books have been published and translated into the new literary European canon in Biuro Literackie. We're gonna talk some about the books themselves, but also about the craft, working with and in the language, and in the intersections of languages and identities. I have with me today Rumena Bužarovska, author of the book Mój Pan Mąż, translated from Macedonian by Dorota Jovanka-Cirlic. Hello, Rumena.
Hi, so nice to be here.
So I wanted to start with some kind of lightning round questions, like a Proust questionnaire. The first one is, to write means to. What does the literary practice mean to you?
Well, it means to do what I love and to try to emulate what I also like doing, reading. So because I really like to read, I think it came naturally that I also wanted to write.
Okay. Does in European literature have any responsibility? Like, what is a story allowed to and what is it not allowed to do?
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that, I mean, in my opinion, of course, stories are supposed to tell the truth, even though they're fiction. So sincerity, honesty are really important. They're maybe supposed to talk about things that we don't talk about that often, or that we're not really able to see, even though they're in front of us. Yeah. And the other thing is, I believe in the political importance of storytelling and what it tells about our times and about our society. I think that that literature is inherently political.
Yeah, okay. I write when I feel. What stimulates or evokes your writing the most?
I think it's perception, probably of things, just moments would be that I notice something that strikes me as just a segment of a larger story. And so they're normally social phenomena. It's like a little episode that speaks a lot about actually how things are in general. So that I think those are the initial things that inspire me to begin writing a story.
But are you trying to like resolve any of the emotions while writing? Like, do you write out from anger or like the inherited need of sharing a story?
Yeah, there's always emotions behind it. Of course, I mean, literature is very emotional. It deals with...
Hopefully.
Yes, I mean, it functions in the realm of emotions. So, yeah, it could be various emotions. It could be anger. It could be sadness. It could be... Oh, well, the first story is anger. Yeah. A lot of anger. I think a lot of pity, a lot of sadness, and also... Well, humor is not really an emotion, but yeah, there's also some kind of a form of entertainment, I think, that exists in it. But I think a lot of, at least this book, there's a lot of sensitivity towards inequalities, and so that kind of sensitivity and this this feeling of injustice drove me to write these stories. But of course, I tried to do it in a humorous way, and so not all of them. I mean, some of them are really tragic, but I like the dichotomy. I like this the contrast between the tragic and the funny, and so I also tried to do that in this book and in most of the other things that I write.
And it surprises me as a reader because I was feeling so immersed in the stories, but on the other hand, I was laughing quite a few times. And the contrast is so interesting because it messes you up kinda, and like you never can be like quite sure on what your like next step gonna be as a reader, and that's so interesting. I love
I'm glad.
The space, the place, the room when I write, where I write best. Do you have your favorite place?
Yeah, actually I do. That's weird. I do, but yes. Well, now I live there. It's this house that my grandfather built. It was like a weekend thing, like a kind of summer house or winter house, whatever you want to call it. It's in the mountains in West Macedonia. So it was always my place of peace and happiness. And I still feel that way. Like the most immense happiness that I feel is when I'm there. So that seems like a place for contemplation. It's in the mountains, there's a forest, you know, so I can write there in peace. And anything else, actually, I love that place. So we actually moved there, so I'm sort of living there now, which is great. So it doesn't mean that I write more, but it does, it is a place of stillness, I think. So I can't really write when I'm in transit anywhere. I have to be peaceful and concentrated. It's work, just like any other work. So in Skopje, I have a room of my own, so I also work there, but I don't actually, you know, there's residencies too, that frequently we go to, and if writers go to, and they're very good for writers' careers and for generally networking and allowing other people to experience different literatures. I mean, other people who are in that particular country to experience the literature of someone else, and so they're good for writers, and they're good for generally for culture and society. But yeah, residencies, if they're peaceful, they really actually help you write. So peaceful places.
Peaceful places, okay. And last but not least, I will stop writing. I will stop creating if...
Oh God, I don't know. I think, I'm not sure if I were in the middle of a war, I don't think that I would be writing at that moment. However, writing is a process that's not just the physical writing. You know, it takes me a long time to actually figure out the story and make notes and allow the story to grow inside me before I sit down and write something. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to sit and write. So I think for a lot of writers, that's also a thing. But I don't think, you know, I think writing for me is pleasure, and it's supposed to be, I find it entertaining. Of course, it's sometimes difficult to write because it's job, but it's like a job that you love. So in that sense, I think if I want to say the world is falling apart, it is kind of falling apart right now anyway, but at least not in my, it's not the kind of falling apart that we
experiencing hand to hand.
Yeah, we're, you know, I don't live in a war zone yet. I don't know. You know, we could all live in a war zone soon. So that would make things difficult, I think. For me, that's the scariest thing.
Yeah. I love too that you said that you're trying to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
Can you surprise yourself with your own writing?
Yeah, sure I can. And very frequently I forget what I wrote. And then sometimes when I hear a translation, I think, oh my God, there were several plays that were, 6 plays actually, that were made of my husband. And I remember one in Slovenian, and I was, Slovenian is a language that it's very different from Macedonian, but we were in Yugoslavia together, and so sometimes, you know, you can get a little bit, it's Slavic, so you can understand a little. It's not like, I can't understand much Polish, just like some words, but lexically, there's some similarities, but I think it's closer to Slovenian, or we've been more attuned to listening to it. So I just remember watching the play, and I thought, they said something, and I thought, oh, this is really funny, the way that they described this man. I thought they did it. I thought they, you know, inserted it into the text, and I thought, I said to them, that was a very funny description, and they said, you wrote it. I was like, okay. So yes, I do surprise myself, and also frequently in the process of writing, something will come up, and then, you know, I'll be laughing when I'm writing it, so that's good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mój Pan Mąż consists of 11 stories, consecutive acts of the narrative. Women narrate in the first person about their relationships and with their husbands, about graping with patriarchy. Yet it's not really that accusatory of a book. Each of these characters are described based on their psychological background, on the past experiences that shapes their behavior. So nothing is really black and white in your book, and there are no extreme oppositions. I love that. It's like a work with beating with the stereotype in general. So, but I wanted to ask you if within writing, within the process of writing and creating your characters, aren't you a little bit tempted to condemn them, to judge them?
Yeah, I think I'm judgy though. I mean, I'm glad that you don't come off as very judgy to you. Look, there's of course condemnation, but there's also understanding. I think I try to make sure that in the stories there is a social context that can be seen through the way in which the characters work. So
It shapes them.
yes, you see how society. I think in terms of my stories and my literature, I try to what for me is most exciting, not just in my literature but other writers as well, is to see how the social affects the personal. So like this reflection of society into interpersonal relationships. So like mini dramas essentially. So what happens is I hope that you can tell, that the reader can tell why these people are acting in a particular way. So there is like a judginess in terms of that, oh my God, I can't believe what you're doing. Like there's some stories where, this
the violence is so obvious.
Yes.
It's really,
But the empathy is also there.
Yeah, of course.
And so I can, the power of a writer, especially when you do the first person, is that you can sort of insert your ethical judgment in the background. And so mine is that of empathy, especially towards these women. Not so much towards some of the husbands, right? Some of the husbands are horrible. So, but generally the empathy lies in these women who are far from perfect. So a lot of them are quite flawed, which is because they're human. And I was just trying to show that we're all, we're human and we make mistakes. And, very frequently in literature, women are just painted as, like kind of black or white. There's 3 types of women and that's it. So I just wanted to show some women that would be, that the way in which they're not shown that much. More and more, thankfully. Yeah. Thankfully, we're changing. But that was that. I was just trying to show some normal women making mistakes and lying to themselves about what they're doing.
But you chose the first person narrative. It's very interesting. It's like, of course, perfect for theater.
Yeah.
Were you writing with that in mind?
No, I didn't think of it at all. I love the first person. When the theater pieces came out, I was surprised. I said, what? Okay, interesting. I didn't, because I only saw it as prose and I didn't think that, I didn't know much about how theater pieces work nowadays. And especially they take prose into consideration more and more. Yeah. So it kind of played into that. I didn't plan it. So, when I didn't plan anything when I was writing them. I just wanted to write them. I knew how I wanted to write them, and I know because I love the first person perspective. It's layered, It's what the person is saying. It's actually what they're meaning, and then there's another perspective of the author who's kind of in the background. Yeah.
And you also can show the differences between owning the language and between using and expressing different emotions within those different characters. And I love it so much because sometimes their experiences are kind of similar, but they are expressing themselves in such a different way.
Yeah, the first person gives room for real language. Yeah. So, and you have to, it has to be, that's why the translations are so important. If they're stiff, if it doesn't sound like actually someone is talking, it could be a problem. Yeah. They have to sound real. They have to sound convincing. It's like someone is talking to you. And when you do the first person in that sense, when it feels like they're not really addressing, they don't do you. Like it's not like like a Salinger thing or like Catcher in the Rye, where if you want to know the truth, like someone is telling the reader something. I'm not doing that. But it just sounds like some kind of even like a confession, right? In some situations, because the language is so real. Yeah.
And this is how kind of you feel. You feel like you're hearing out the confession.
Yeah.
It's very intimate and very personal. Like the connection a reader can develop with your characters. It's very special.
I'm so glad that it worked. Thank you.
Especially as a woman.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, 70% or something like that of readers are women.
Yeah, of course. So come on.
It was about time that we started writing to and for ourselves, which is what we're doing more and more. So, great. Yeah. I think men can now also learn what women are like in literature because they never really encountered them. So if you ask a man to write a dialogue between a woman and like 2 women, they're like, I don't know what they talk about. Whereas we totally know what they talk about.
Of course. Okay, so let's go into the translation direction, because your book has already been translated into several different languages.
Yeah,
and
quite a few.
Patriarchy in general is unfortunately universal system.
Yeah.
But it definitely takes on different dimensions in different cultural backgrounds, and that's why I think your book gonna resonate with a Polish reader a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But how was it in different countries and in different languages when this system is on a different stage of development? Let's call it like that.
Yeah, you know what? I think, as you said, the patriarchy is quite universal, and then not quite, totally universal. So it's just that it has its own ways of manifestation in certain cultural manifestations in certain countries, and probably, not probably, but in some places it's worse than in others.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say how bad it is in Macedonia, but it's probably just as bad as the surrounding countries and, well, a lot of Eastern Europe and maybe a lot of Western Europe. I think in Western Europe it's just camouflaged differently, and of course they have more women in parliament and more women in politics, and you know they haven't banned abortion yet, but you know they've banned it most in the United States, and that's the West. So you know, if you think about America,
really mean it,
no,
at this point,
America is really drastic in terms of the differences, in terms of how horribly patriarchal it is in certain situations, and then just how very liberal it is in others. So so that's another thing. I think the most interesting thing is that the book works best, I think, if it's translated well. Because if it doesn't translate it well, it doesn't resonate. Yeah. Also, it works when the publisher takes care of actually placing it to the readers. And so so in some places it's surprisingly worked, and in some places it surprisingly hasn't worked. And I think it doesn't always have to do with the region. Like, it really, it really worked in France. Like, the book it got published by Gallimard, which is a huge publishing house. So, you know, they really took care of the translation and of how it sounded, and the editing is amazing. And then they really took care of how it looked, and then how they placed it in the country. So, and you know, you could say that France has a huge history of feminism, but
the Me Too movement was kind of...
It was right. It was like the French femme fatale is, which is also kind of playing into the male imagination. Yes, and yes, exactly. So, and a lot of feminists, of course, in France they know that, and so it really worked there. And I had some strange experiences because it's not so. You know, the covers are very interesting in many different languages, but also the French one also has this embrace, but the guy is like scribbled, and the woman is going like ha ha, like she's smiling, like like in a like she's making fun of him. So I know I was at this book fair, and this, you know, a husband and a wife, and there were some like in their 50s or in the 60s, and they looked at the book, and the woman wanted to buy it, but the husband kind of scowled at her, and then they left, and then she came back in secret to buy the book. So that happens, and then there was another, and then there were a lot of mansplainers, like, oh, it should not be scribbled, and then like a lot of the characters inside the book, they came and they told me exactly, they mansplained at me, and then there was, oh yes, you know, I was in Paris, actually not yet, well maybe even yesterday, no, the day before yesterday, and I went to Simone de Beauvoir's grave, and as I was sitting there, this older man came and lectured me. He spoke at me like this man from Brussels, and then and then in the end, I said, oh, I have met de Beauvoir, you know. He said something like that, you know, I met her, you know. And I said, what was she like? And he said, oh, you know, her hair is quite dirty. And I must say, you know, he spoke like like this posh British. And then he told me, oh, you know, I used to be a teacher, but now I don't want to be a teacher anymore because there's so many Muslims. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened at a
bingo. You know? check.
Right there in front of her grave. Like, it was, so it's not like Europe does not harbor those prejudices like Western Europe, which we see as civilized, right? Yeah, so, but in general, like the book really worked in Yugoslavia, but like mostly in Serbia, it's a hit, but also it has to do with how much people read there, how close they feel to the culture. And it really worked in Greece too. And so, yeah, those are some of the countries. In America, or in English-speaking countries, it's so difficult to get inside that market. It's very competitive, very capitalist. They're not quite interested so much in foreign voices now, more and more. But you have to be somehow, there's room for like a little, just a few. It doesn't really work that way there. So I didn't even expect. It's very frequently getting translated into English is important for people like me, and actually not just me, like a lot of us from this region, in order for other people to read the book and be able to understand it and then take it on, because they don't like books so much from little countries with, you know, names like mine. They're like, oh God, I can't pronounce this, so, you know, whatever, we're not going to publish that. So it's hard. I would suggest to any reader that, you know, they have an English translation ready so that they can actually show it, so that someone can take the time to read it. But yeah, so it has a lot to do with not just not just patriarchy. It's connected to the whole market.
I really hope that Simone was like listening to it and laughing it off, because like, come on, you should kind of like make an addition about the story.
Yes, it was hilarious. I can't believe it happened to me. I was just, because it was like a cliche, you know. And a lot of the things in this book, for instance, the things that are cliches that people tell me, you know, this sounds like a cliche. They're actually,
it's gonna happen.
They are things that happened. There are things that I saw or heard, and I wrote them down and I put them inside the book. And then for the things that didn't happen, they're like, they really believe them, you know? So it's quite the opposite in terms of the reader's minds. They don't understand that the cliche is actually part of reality.
Lucky them.
Yeah.
I believe that this book can like evoke very strong emotions and encourage many readers to share their own stories. Many times I've encountered this kind of situation when a reader was like feeling so strongly about the book that they needed to tell their own experiences and share their own experiences with the author. Was it the same for you? Anything happened like that?
Yeah, I think even at one book launch, I actually insisted. I asked women to write their own stories about this in the first person, to give me snippets, and a lot of them did, and some of them did anonymously because they wanted to talk about it. Yeah, it's, you know, the more the book is published and translated, the less I have time to actually hear out these stories. There's a lot of readers. But definitely I've seen that happen, and that really makes me happy. It means that it sparked something, that they identify with a lot of the stories. You know, there are things that they were not sort of just allowed to say, I guess. Yeah.
I want to ask you in general, not about this particular book, but is it hard for you to step out of the story, you know, to shake it off when you're like writing on something and becoming possibly like emotionally involved with the experiences of your heroines, let's call them like that. Is it hard for you to step out of it, to leave them kind of?
You know, with stories it's easier because they're shorter, and then you kind of have to leave them. So but also not in this book. The next book that I wrote after this one, there was another story that was longer. It was like a novella. I think the form allows you to shake it off, but if it's longer, it's more difficult. And this is why novelists suffer. I'm writing a novel now, and I think, oh God, it's so hard to sometimes write in a state of great sadness or of agitation. It's important to have emotion when you write, but also to be kind of sane when you do it, because it's not possible to. It's a craft. So if you're really agitated, it doesn't work. And so for me, and so I don't, and shaking the story off is a problem, because then you're living with it, and then you see everything through that prism. Kind of after a while you get sick of it. In the other book that I wrote after this one, called I'm Not Going Anywhere, there's a story with a woman who, I began the story as I was kind of making fun of her, but then I really started feeling empathy for her. And then towards the end, I grew her into like this heroine. So the process changed me for some reason. So a lot of different things happen that you can't really foresee when you write, though I really like to plan. I love planning. And like I know the ending, but but in the meantime, a lot of other things can happen.
Yeah. Do you think that some kind of like just snippets of reality are more formed for a short story than for a novel? Like, because you're trying many different forms.
Yeah.
Do you feel more comfortable within a different form because of the tension that occurs in the story? Like, do you choose it because it's more spacious than the other, or how do you choose the story for a form?
Yeah. You know, I wrote 4 books of short stories, and I really loved short stories, and that was the reason why I wrote that. And I thought it was more, it was liberating because I could talk about more characters.
Yeah.
And I also thought there were more like episodes of everyday life that talk a lot about reality. So I really enjoyed writing because of that, short stories. But I don't know, the novel gives you the ability to write something, you know, like not have just that episode, but rather write an odyssey of change. And it gives you more room to explore, let's say, other episodes in that maybe particular person's or family's life. So that's, you know, I think because everyone was asking me to write a novel, and I don't know if if I finish this one, I hope I do, but you know, you never know. Yeah. So, but the reason I did it, I really was like, I'm never going to write a novel because I can't stand how everyone's asking me to write one. It feels like the short story is not important, and I don't feel that I love the short story. So, I didn't, you know, so I was like, I'm just out of spite, I'm not going to write a novel. But as I was writing this, I realized that I had like that this was one character, and I thought, oh, well, let me just connect everything. And, you know, and my narratives were getting longer and longer, and that happened I'm not going anywhere, where I ended up with this novella. And there was another thing that I haven't really admitted, and that's that I would feel, when I write, there's this moment that I start feeling really bad about what I do. And I think it happens to a lot of writers, right? So, and that would kind of happen around the 15th page for me.
Measured. Oh.
I knew where it was. I would feel like, oh my God, this is horrible. I'm stupid. Why am I making people, who do I think I am? Who do I think I am to be inventing stories, and then other people are taking the time to read them? I am no God, or, you know, like, do I think that I'm in the position of a creator, like some kind of a godly figure? I don't think that writers are that, but in that position I would think, ooh, you are so egotistical that you're even taking the liberty to do this. Oh God, it was awful. Like this saboteur would just go crazy on me around that
That's
time.
A woman writer thing, you know that.
Yes, right? Now I know. Now I'm like, oh, it's just you, shut up, you know. But you know, before that, no, a male writer is probably like, oh,
I'm gonna take up the space. Yeah.
I'm a genius. But no, and I think it's healthy that we're like that, because we start doubting what we write and making it better. You know, it's good to doubt yourself, but not that much. So, you know, in this situation, I was always like, oh my God, I did. And then I would kind of try to bring it to a close. And I think it happened to me with Jeans. Like, Jeans is a story that could have been a novel. And
could be.
Yeah, I guess so. But Jeans has so many different episodes in it. And I know when I was writing it, I was like, okay, I want to tell this story, but let me finish it. Let me finish it. I can't, let me finish it. So I didn't, I don't think I had the self-confidence back then to understand that, okay, maybe I could just draw this out and allow myself to write more about these characters. So now I do that. Hopefully.
Do you sometimes revisit your characters, like trying to put them in a different environment, and like maybe continue a bit of their experiences into different stories?
I haven't done it yet. I did base the character that I am working on now in my novel on one of, actually, the stories from my husband, a man. But not fully, but I realized that was the kind of stereotype that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, okay. Do you consider yourself a little bit of a literary rebel?
You know, I never thought of myself that way. I always thought I was a coward. It's weird, but that's the woman thing.
Yeah.
I always thought, oh, I'm not speaking up enough, or I'm not really saying what I want. Yeah. I still kind of think that, because if I was brave enough, I would probably be even more open, and hopefully one day I can get there. Yeah. You know, but it takes a lot of courage. It takes also a lot of balancing with the people around you, because you can hurt people. Yeah, okay. And I don't want to be one of those writers who does not consider that their own life is also connected to other people's lives. And I noticed this because I wrote a book of nonfiction recently, which is kind of like a travelogue and a memoir, and they're personal essays. Mm-hmm. But they're based on a road trip I did in the United States and on my experiences with America. And so I really struggled with that. I found myself being so nice. I thought, is this really me? Because I'm really not bitter at all. And like, it was, I would normally, it's one thing what I say, but then there's something really, you know, like something more harsh in the background, which I didn't say in that book. I really didn't want to hurt anybody. And I don't think that it's worthwhile hurting people. Yeah. So that's something, I think in that sense, maybe that's what stops me from being completely rebellious. Mm-hmm.
It's not about who am I to write, who am I to hurt.
Yes, yeah. Definitely don't want to hurt.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Rumena.
Thank you.
So Rumena Bužarovska, Mój pan mąż, translated from Macedonian.